Ghost of Tsushima was a brilliant end to the PS4 generation. It was the last major exclusive release for that console, and it really pushed the limits of what was possible on hardware from 2013. Despite its flaws, I loved Ghost of Tsushima with its beautiful world, vast array of interesting characters, and its engaging combat system. And I must say that I think the recently released Iki Island expansion was in many ways handled better than the main game. In previous videos, I've mentioned that there was lots of filler across the map that bogged the game down for me, as well as a lack of personal moments for Jin that showed us the side of him that isn't focused on the invasion. The main story of Ghost of Tsushima is chock full of brilliant moments, don't get me wrong, but I felt like something was missing. Well, as it turns out, what the game was missing was the Iki Island expansion, which in my opinion handled storytelling and open world activities much better than the very bloated main game. In today's video, I'm going to talk a little bit about why I feel like this and why I think the Iki Island expansion was actually a very pleasant surprise. This video is brought to you by MANSCAPED.com, the global brand for men's grooming and hygiene products. You guys seen that cutscene in Ghost of Tsushima where Jin gets out of the bath? I know you guys copped a look. I mean, you can't really avoid it, it's right there. But I know a lot of you are probably wondering, how is Jin so hairless? What does he use? How does he groom himself? And I got the answer right here for you guys. Jin's obviously using products from Manscaped. I mean, how else would he be that perfectly groomed? Well, recently Manscaped actually hooked me up with a bunch of stuff from their all-in-one performance package 4.0. So yeah, let's check it out and see how Jin remains so smooth at all times. And how you can too. The first thing to highlight in the performance package is the Lawnmower 4.0 body trimmer. This is Manscaped's 4th generation electric waterproof trimmer with advanced skin safe technology, which reduces nicks and cuts on the most sensitive regions of the body. I mean, this trimmer is actually crazy. It even has a light on it, so you can see whatever it is that you're doing in any region that you're shaving. And don't worry, it's completely waterproof, so you can use it in the shower, the bath, whatever. Just don't worry about it. Also included in the Performance Package 4.0 are the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and the Crop Reviver. Oh man. The Crop Preserver is for all-day body odor protection, and the Reviver is a convenient spritz with cooling aloe vera to quickly refresh the area whenever you need it. I gotta admit, I've used both of these and they actually feel great. I came out of that shower feeling like a new man. I mean, are you really a man until you have your own bottle of ball deodorant? I don't think so. I mean, Manscaped really has you covered from head to toe with their Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer. To be honest, I've been in need of a good nose trimmer for a long while, so this was a nice surprise. And it's by far the best nose trimmer I've ever used. There's no snagging or cutting or anything like that. I mean, you don't want to be that guy with a forest coming out of his nose, so it's really useful and something that a lot of people overlook. And it doesn't quite end just there. For a limited time, you get all of this plus 2 free gifts: the Shed travel bag and the Manscaped anti-chafing boxes. And if that isn't enough, then I've got you covered. You can go to manscaped.com today and get 20% off with free international shipping when you use promo code LEF20 at checkout. If you're a testosterone-filled beast like me who has lots of hair, then I seriously recommend considering getting this, because it's made my entire grooming experience so much more easy. And with that, let's get back to the video. I think the best place to start with this expansion is the story. How it starts, how it progresses, and how it ends, but most importantly, what it does for Jin's character and our perception of him. The story begins on Tsushima Island, and Jin investigates a nearby settlement. We stumble across a Mongol yurt, a standard on Tsushima Island at the time, although something is different. The colours of the clan do not match any of the existing clans already on Tsushima Island. After some investigation, we realise that this is a clan of Mongols who have invaded Iki Island instead of Tsushima, led by one known as the Eagle. People have heard reports that the Eagle has been somehow breaking the minds of those that live there and pillaging the land for themselves. Of course, the only person able to stop him is Jin, and we sail to the island and find out exactly what is happening. Firstly, I want to mention that in a previous video I said that the DLC takes place during Act 2, but after playing I realised that the expansion fits much better if you play it after completing the main story of Ghost of Tsushima first. For example, firstly, Jin would not leave Tsushima undefended and just go off to Iki based on a few rumours when the Khan is still at large and attacking his home. Secondly, why would Jin not even tell Lord Shimura or ask for his help when going to Iki? It will be much easier to take back the island with the help of the Shogun. This suggests that the DLC takes place during a period of time where Lord Shimura and Jin aren't on speaking terms. Thirdly, most of the story surrounding the Sakai family and their fall is wrapped up further towards the end of the game, making Iki Island the next logical step for Jin as he needs to face his unresolved trauma regarding his father's death after the chaos of Tsushima's occupation. I retract my statement about the expansion being set during Act 2. You can play it at any point you like, although I do think it fits best when you're done with the main game first. Anyways, with that out of the way, I think it's time we head to Iki Island to discuss Jin's journey through his past, and how I think the DLC does wonders for his character. Jin modifies Kazumasa's armor to look like generic samurai armor, so as to avoid conflict with the people of Iki who hate Clan Sakai, and boards the boat to Iki alongside his horse. On the way to Iki Island, your ship is caught in a terrible storm that sends you and your horse overboard and into the ocean. This is a nice little bit of story mirroring, because it's later revealed that Jin's father was able to subdue the people of Iki as a result of a storm hitting the island for days. It's almost as if the remnants of the storm of Clan Sakai still remain on the island. After waking up, we realise that the boat, our horse, and the captain are nowhere to be found. Jin cares for his horse a lot, and so this first section without him is quite somber, as you can tell Jin would do anything to have him back. It's little subtleties like this that do a good job of showing you the more human side of Jin straight away. Upon finding where the boat crashed on the island, we find the captain who drowned at sea and washed up on the shores of Iki. You actually get the option here to bury him and pay your respects to him, which is a nice touch. This interaction is actually one of many unwritten tales which you can find on Iki Island, which are basically small side stories that aren't marked on the map. We'll talk more about these later because I thought they were a brilliant addition to the open world. After doing some searching, we find our horse being chased by some Mongols. This is where we learn a new ability, Horse Charge. To be honest, this is something that isn't really that useful in most circumstances, but it's a nice touch and can help when you're faced with a group of enemies when you're on horseback. I can't really look a gift horse in the mouth in this case, as it's just a small quality of life change. After getting our horse back and saving some of the locals, that's where the DLC really starts, and we can effectively explore Iki Island and investigate the Mongol threat. Close to the beginning of the expansion, you will be defeated in combat on Iki. You are then captured by the Eagle, the new antagonist of the expansion. To be honest, she's not a groundbreaking antagonist, but she isn't terrible either. She basically serves the purpose she needs to prompt Jin into delving into his own memories and facing the guilt he has for letting his father die. She gives Jin this elixir that infects his mind and brings forward thoughts that he didn't know he had. It works in a similar way to the Joker blood from the Batman Arkham games that made Batman hallucinate the Joker. Jin basically hallucinates the Eagle speaking to him throughout the DLC, and this prompts him to face his deeper feelings and unresolved traumas. Yeah, the Eagle herself isn't really that interesting of a villain, but as I said, she serves a purpose. I've seen a lot of people confused as to why the Eagle lets Jin go during this section, and I'll put forward my theory as to why. She lets Jin go because she knows he's going to try and contact the raiders that live on the island. If he's to stand any chance of beating her and liberating the island, he needs allies. She lets him go because she is confident that the raiders would never side with a samurai, much less a Sakai, the son of the man who killed their loved ones. Her elixir is merely insurance that Jin will succumb to it and eventually lose his mind, just like everyone else that consumes it. She needs to let Jin go because she wants him to fight the raiders, allowing her to fully take the island in the confusion. This is what I gathered anyway. She didn't just let him go for the fun of it, and it's not because Jin has plot armor or anything like that. The elixir causes Jin to hallucinate about his father, setting up that this DLC will be about Jin and Kazumasa's relationship, and how he never felt like he made his father proud while he was alive. This hallucination section is played as young Jin, to demonstrate the vulnerable position he's in whilst delving into these painful memories, reliving the death of his father at SENJO Gorge, on the coast of Iki Island. During the hallucination, a man appears and helps Jin, slaying the Mongols and carrying him to safety. Upon waking up, the man reveals himself to be Tenzo, a seemingly honest and honourable individual who works with the raiders of the island. Jin realises that this is his chance to form an alliance and introduces himself as Jin from Yarikawa, as he knows the Sakai name is shunned on Iki. He convinces Tenzo to let him help in the fight against the Eagle tribe, and Tenzo agrees to lead us to the raiders' encampment, a place called Fune's Refuge. Upon arrival, it becomes very clear that the people of Iki dislike samurai of all kinds, which is to be expected after what the Sakai clan did to the people of their island. I really like how Ghost of Tsushima continues to contradict history's glorified ideal to the samurai. They're remembered as honourable lords, but in war there will always be atrocities committed on both sides, and this game does a good job of showing that realistically the samurais still did terrible things to gain power and influence, as well as the lasting effects that these things can have on victims. Tenzo takes us to the leader of the raiders, Fune, who immediately scoffs at the idea of working with a samurai, but Jin convinces her that if they are to take down the eagle, they must do it together. She agrees to help him but remains dubious as she knows what samurai are capable of, although of course she doesn't know that Jin is a Sakai, son of the Butcher of Iki. At this part of the game, the majority of the missions are similar to that of the main game, with lots of fighting, horse riding and investigating, all the while chipping away at the eagle's influence over Iki. Jin gains the trust of the raiders through proving himself by taking down the eagle's warship, killing one of their generals and liberating many of the strongholds they have across the island. It's all really fun gameplay with a mixture of stealth sections, large combat encounters, and a really nice duel between Jin and Kunbish. What's great is the DLC isn't bloated with missions. You do what needs to be done and you move on to the next story beat, which I'm a big fan of. I think the main game of Ghost of Tsushima needed way more focus on story and characters, and less on the overall taking down of the Mongol invasion. After fighting back the forces of the Eagle tribe and pacifying their warship, Tenzo pieces things together and realizes that Jin is a Sakai. Tensions rise, but Jin manages to convince him that he really does mean good and that he wants to help them take back the island. Tenzo agrees to keep it between them, and they all ride to Kidafure village to try and take down the Eagle once and for all. The plan is to take Kidafure village and push back the Mongols occupying the surrounding fields. This would push the Eagle tribe further towards the coast, leaving them nowhere to run. I actually really enjoyed this mission. Something Ghost of Tsushima did pretty well in my opinion is the more large-scale battles. You really feel like you're a samurai caught in the midst of gritty battle as you parry and dodge through attacks from all angles. After fighting through the forces of the Eagle tribe, Jin, Tenzo and Fune chase the remaining Mongols down to finish them off. As Tenzo removes his blade from the neck of the last Mongol, he utters a mantra, "May your death benefit all beings." This is the same mantra that the man uttered after he killed Jin's father, meaning that Tenzo is the one that killed him all those years ago. I personally saw this coming from quite early on, given the fact that the first time we see Tenzo, he kills Jin's hallucination of his father, which I might add is a nice bit of subtle foreshadowing that can be easily missed if you aren't really paying attention. Jin flies into a fit of rage and raises his tanto to Tenzo's neck, but realizes that without the help of Tenzo, there is no hope of defeating the Eagle, and that they must put their differences aside for the good of the island. Jin hatches a plan to trap the Eagle the same way they trapped Jin's father, by using SENJO Gorge, a nearby ravine. They both realise that they cannot hide who Jin is anymore, it would only complicate matters, and so Tenzo rides back to Fune's refuge to tell her the plan and to reveal Jin's identity. At this point I felt it was fitting to don Kazumasa's armour. I think symbolically it's really cool to see Jin wearing the armour of the Butcher of Iki and reclaiming his clan's honour and restoring its image among the people. Jin, Tenzo and Fune and the rest of the raiders ride to the opening to Senjo Gorge to face the rest of the Eagle tribe there and drive them from the island. This is another quite long combat section which has you fighting many different types of enemies, as well as having to fight off a hallucination of the Eagle before each fight. This gives you a taste of the boss to come. Upon fighting your way through and making it to the other side of the gorge, Tenzo and Jin find themselves face to face with the Eagle. This leads into a pretty tough boss fight. A duel between Jin and the Eagle on the ground where Kazumasa died. As I said, the fight is actually pretty hard and it can be quite difficult to read her movements as she's very fast. The eagle can also switch between using a short sword and spear, which can catch you off guard if you're playing for the first time. This is definitely much harder than the Khan boss fight at the end of the main game, because she's so damn fast. And she's even more deadly if you're playing on lethal difficulty. Halfway through the fight, we have this really nice moment between Jin and his father, which allows Jin to let go of the guilt he harboured over the years after watching Kazumasa die. This apparition or hallucination of Kazumasa explains to Jin that the stories that the people of Iki tell about him are true, and that he had to do terrible things. He raised Jin not as a son, but as a samurai, even though Jin needed a father after his mother died. It's here that Jin realises Kazumasa's death was not his fault. He brought it on himself, and that it's not his duty to avenge him. I really like this moment because it highlights Jin's rocky upbringing, and how the death of his mother almost doomed him to a life of mindless servitude to the samurai. Jin makes peace with his father's death and snaps out of the hallucination, no longer afflicted by the eagle's elixir. The game then puts you back into the fight, and it's time to finish her off once and for all. Finally, the eagle has been killed, and Jin has restored the honour of his clan in forgiving Tenzo and choosing not to exact revenge. He has made new allies and healed the wounds of the past. The story of Ghost of Tsushima Iki Island is by no means the most spectacular story ever, but what it does do is show us a side of Jin that the main game really didn't endeavour to explore that much. It shows a vulnerability in his character, opposed to the unbreakable stoic samurai that we saw so much of during the main story. I love the mirroring between him and Kazumasa and their different outlooks on the world. The main story of Ghost of Tsushima was Jin leaving the ideology of the samurai behind, but Iki Island's story was Jin leaving his own past behind, and that alone made for a much more personal story, which I happen to really enjoy, somewhat even more than the game's main story. Of course, a huge part of Ghost of Tsushima was the open world, and don't worry, there's plenty to do across Iki Island. I actually think it's higher quality content than the main game. For example, instead of there being millions of fox dens, bamboo strikes and shrines, there are only a handful of each, if that. In addition to the old activities making another appearance, I think Iki Island's side content really shines with the new additions they've made to the open world. Firstly, the addition of animal sanctuaries is a nice change to the Inari shrines of the main game, but they also offer exposition on Jin and his mother's relationship, which is something that is rarely talked about in the game. After interacting with the sanctuary, you play a song to calm the animals, and afterwards Jin recounts a wholesome memory of his mother about, for example, how she taught him to play the flute when he was a boy, and how they would spend long evenings together talking about life. I really enjoyed these small reflections from Jin because it reminded me of when I was a boy and would spend lots of invaluable time with my mum. It's small things like this that can be very relatable, and I absolutely adored the backstory provided by the animal sanctuaries. The next side activity is a little bit more action oriented, the archery challenges. These were actually a really nice challenge and required true accuracy, so much so that I had to change my gear and charms to be more effective at archery, and even then I still found it hard to get a perfect score. Genuinely, if you haven't already, I recommend trying to go and get gold on at least a few of these challenges. They're actually really tough. You are rewarded with an archery charm for completing these challenges, which allows you to slow time for longer when aiming a bow. Overall, a pretty fun side activity that I was pleasantly surprised by. This next one is one of my favourites, the tournament at Fune's Refuge. This tournament has you fighting various skilled opponents in a ring. However, in these duels, it's not your goal to kill your opponent, but to outwit them and land 3 hits on them without taking 3 hits yourself. Again, this tournament was a nice surprising challenge, as some of the opponents are very quick and can catch you off guard. There are 4 opponents you'll face, the last one being the most difficult to beat. You can't really go wrong with a simple combat tournament side activity, so I really enjoyed this and would love to see something similar on a larger scale in future games in the series. Lastly, probably my favourite and most surprising of all the side activities are the memories of Kazumasa that can be found around the island of Iki. There are 5 Sakai banners scattered around the map that, when approached and interacted with, allow Jin to reflect on his memories of his father that occurred during their visit to Iki Island. This is by far some of the best and most compelling storytelling in the DLC, and possibly the entire game. This character that we barely knew anything about is suddenly humanized and given a lot more context, whilst also remaining rather mysterious. The flashbacks show us how Kazumasa saw Jin, and how he initially didn't want him to come to Iki with him, and how he saw Jin as too soft to be a samurai. Slowly, as their conquest of Iki progresses, Jin and Kazumasa end up bonding through the bloodshed of others on the battlefield, which shows how their relationship was not your typical father-son deal. It also shows how Jin vied for his father's attention constantly and developed a lot of doubts about himself and his abilities through this cold and loveless relationship. In the end though, Kazumasa seems quite fond of Jin, and vice versa, but this newfound father-son bond is cut short when the Battle of SENJO Gorge happens and Kazumasa is killed. If you didn't bother to do these side quests, I really recommend it. It adds some superb exposition to Jin and his childhood. It's just genuinely really great and adds a lot of emotion to his character that I think he lacked before. The tales of Iki are exactly what you get on the tin. Side tales that serve as something else to do in the open world. I won't talk about these too much as I'm sure you all get the idea of side quests, but I do feel as if this quality over quantity approach has done wonders for even the tales of Iki 2. There are only a handful of tales on Iki Island, which is why each of them feels a lot more involved than the ones in the main game. The main game had over 60 tales of Tsushima across the island, and I just think that was far too many, leading to a lot of them feeling pointless and the open world feeling bloated. I actually quite like the tales of Iki that have you offering help to a stranger to save her husband, leading to having to make a choice between saving her husband or the man who leads their village, or infiltrating a temple and going undercover to find out more about why people are helping the Eagle tribe, or meeting up with our good old friend Kenji and helping him get out of a debt which he owes to someone quite dangerous. There's also a whole tale dedicated to Fune, which I really appreciate as she seemed quite distant and uninteresting throughout the main story of Iki Island, and yet the side quest adds a nice amount of humanity to her character to make her feel more believable and likeable. I feel as though they were able to add a lot more into these tales because they didn't bloat Iki with pointless content, and to be honest, I love to see the improvements they've made. I also want to talk about the unwritten tales that I mentioned earlier right at the beginning of the video. These are short enclosed stories or events that players can stumble across in the open world, and they're not marked on the map. The first one we were able to do was burying the captain of the boat, but there are a few more. For example, you can help a beekeeper who's being attacked by Mongols. Killing the Mongols allows him to continue his work peacefully, and he even writes you a little poem at the end, which is quite wholesome. Another unwritten tale activates when you stumble across a small ruined hut in the wilderness. Upon examining it, a woman in a mask will speak to you, asking you to protect the forest from the Mongols, to repent for the damage that the samurai caused there. Upon defeating them, the woman has disappeared like a ghost, and Jin says one simple line of dialogue that I really liked. "If you can hear me, I hope I protected the land, the way I did not as a boy." It yet again adds more humanity to his character, displaying his regret not only for how the people of Iki were treated during the samurai invasion, but also for the war-torn land that was left in the wake of Clan Sakai. But I'd say the best of all the unwritten tales is one known as a helping hand, where on 3 instances around the map you can find a man scavenging and foraging for resources to build a new home after the Mongols destroyed his old one. Each time he's struggling to gather, and each time you can offer him some resources of your own if you have enough. After speaking to him and helping him on these 3 different occasions, you can visit the man's house after he was able to build it, and he thanks you profusely, telling you that it's just as much your house as it is his own. I just think that this small tale is a nice reminder that even small deeds can be the world to someone else, and that you should always offer help to those that you can, no matter how small. Mythic tales also make a return from the main game, only this time there are only 2, although I personally think the rewards are well worth it. The first mythic tale is about Kazumasa, the butcher of Iki. It tells a story of how he would ride into battle in his black armor and black horse armor to match. Jin sets off to seek this horse armor, which can be found in a collection of shipwrecks off the coast of Iki Island. To get to it, you must traverse a dangerous parkour route through the ruined ships. This is actually a really fun quest due to the exploration aspect, and the reward of the horse armor is well worth it, because it looks great. You can even dye the horse armor by collecting Sakai banners and returning them to the dye merchant, so that's a nice little bonus to an already great quest with a great reward. The second mythic tale is about a pirate known as Blackhand Riku, and his legendary armor that was supposedly inhabited by a demon. Jin investigates the many coves of Iki, and finds the hiding place of the legendary pirate. Riku challenges Jin to a duel, and you have to beat him to get the armor. This fight is actually one of my favourite duels in the entire game. It's very challenging, and let's be honest, the duels are always amazing in this game because of how robust the combat system is. After facing off against Blackhand Riku and defeating him, you get his armor, the Sarugami armor. This easily became my favourite set in the game because it changes the way Jin fights in a really powerful way. You can no longer perform normal parries, you can only perfect parry. When successfully performing a perfect parry, you can unleash powerful slashing attacks that you can chain between enemies. Additionally, when performing a perfect dodge, this allows Jin to unleash a spinning attack that does massive damage, can be chained between enemies, and stuns all the enemies in a nearby radius. If you time your parries and dodges right, these abilities are downright OP. Not only this, but you can also dye the armor black, which in my books makes it perfect. So both Mythic Tales are not only very fun, but they also offer some great rewards that are definitely worth it. Overall, I was really impressed with Iki Island, and I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it is. Not only did it do exactly what I wanted it to, but it also somehow did more and exceeded my expectations. We got to see a more human side of Jin, his conflict regarding his father's death was resolved. We had the introduction of some pretty good characters that I hope show up in the future. We got brand new open world activities, many of which actually added a lot to Jin's growth as a character, as well as adding to his backstory, and we got a bunch of really engaging and enjoyable open world side activities and quests with rewards that are very worth it. It's safe to say that I really didn't expect Sucker Punch to hit all these beats as well as they did, but well, they did. Iki Island has proved itself to be an essential part of the story of Ghost of Tsushima, and I really did not expect to love it as much as I do. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I know Iki Island came out a while ago. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing my thoughts on it, and yeah, that's it from me. Take care everyone. See you later.